A fleet of human ships drifted through the outer rim of the Epsilon Quadrant, engines glowing faintly against the ink-black expanse. The galaxy had long whispered of humanity's boldness, some calling it reckless, others calling it legend. Now, on the edge of territory ruled by the so-called Galactic Empire, that boldness would be tested. The Empire's patrol cruisers had never seen vessels like these, sleek, angular, and humming with technology both ancient and impossibly advanced. Humans had crafted them for speed, for endurance, for unpredictability. And as the ships slid between asteroid clusters and frozen comet tails, their presence alone radiated defiance. Inside the lead ship, a human captain leaned over a holotable, tracing the positions of distant Empire forces. Each blip a moving fortress, each formation calculated to intimidate. They had the firepower to crush the human fleet in moments. Yet the humans did not flinch. They did not panic. They laughed, quietly at first, almost to themselves, then louder, a sound of disbelief and pride echoing through the corridors. The Empire's communications crackled to life, a commanding voice echoing across the void. Unidentified vessels, you are entering restricted space. Identify yourselves and prepare for inspection. No one replied. Not because they couldn't, but because humans never rushed to explain themselves to an authority they did not respect. Instead, the fleet moved with fluid coordination, engines weaving arcs of blue light as they shifted positions with the precision of an organism, not a machine. The largest human vessel, a fortress disguised as a scout, projected a field of energy that shimmered like liquid glass. It was not a threat, at least, not yet. It was a statement. The Empire's cruisers scanned, sensors whirring, but the readings were baffling. Energy signatures fluctuated, systems seemed alive, and hull compositions defied every known alloy. One cruiser tried to approach, weapons primed, protocols ready to subdue. In response, the human fleet accelerated, not in fear, but in amusement. The smaller ships flitted like sparks across the void, looping around enemy formations with effortless grace, dodging sensors and artillery fire as if gravity itself bent to their will. On board the lead human vessel, a quiet hum of anticipation filled the bridge. The crew watched the Empire forces struggle to track them, their frustration visible even in holographic projections. There was no panic, no hesitation. Only the calm certainty that humans were not here to be dictated to, they were here to assert their presence. A moment passed. A pause, almost ceremonial, as if the void itself held its breath. Then, with a synchronized pulse of energy from every ship in the fleet, they sent a message through the stars. It was not words, not sounds, only a radiance of light. A wave of organized power that painted the darkness with human ingenuity. The Empire's cruisers faltered. Systems glitched, shields shimmered unnaturally, and the commanding officers blinked in disbelief. Every maneuver they had rehearsed, every threat they had prepared, was rendered uncertain by the audacity before them. The humans laughed again, a ripple of mirth carried through their fleet like an anthem. It was not just joy, it was defiance, pride, and a declaration that no empire, no matter how vast, could dictate the limits of humanity. And in that instant, as the stars stretched endlessly around them and the void held them in suspense, the galaxy began to realize that it had underestimated the species it had long assumed was small. Meek and manageable, the humans were not small. They were not meek. And they were not manageable. The Empire's fleet moved cautiously, massive cruisers forming intimidating formations that had crushed countless civilizations. Yet the human ships moved like living instruments, weaving through the void with impossible synchronicity. Every twist, every pulse, every maneuver was calculated not only to survive, but to unsettle. The humans had learned long ago that intimidation was not measured by the size of your guns, but by the audacity to stand unflinching in the face of them. Inside the lead vessel, the captain's fingers traced the edge of a holographic display, following the Empire ships as they adjusted, repositioned, and recalculated. Years of strategy simulations, ancient battle doctrines, and centuries of defiance unfolded in perfect harmony across the human fleet. Every ship had a purpose, every pulse had a rhythm, and together they formed a force the Empire could not anticipate. The largest cruiser of the Empire unleashed a beam of destructive energy, slicing through space with lethal intent. The humans did not dodge. They let the beam pass, then used its shockwave to slingshot their ships into new positions, emerging with weapons arrays aligned and shields intact. What should have been fear, panic, or retreat became theater, a ballet of calculated moves that spoke of centuries of survival. Innovation and instinctive brilliance. In the corridors of the human flagship, crews moved in quiet harmony. No one shouted. No one panicked. Every action was deliberate. Sensors hummed, energy conduits pulsed with blue-white light, and every system, ancient and modern, worked in perfect unison. The vessel itself seemed alive, anticipating the Empire's reactions before they even occurred. Centuries of human ingenuity were encoded into every panel, every hull plate, every resonating pulse. The Empire commander issued another order, voice sharp and unyielding: engage. Neutralize. Subdue. Bring them to our command. But across the void, the human fleet responded not with words, but with action. Small fighter craft darted like sparks, weaving between the colossal cruisers. Shields shimmered in defiance as energy pulses disrupted targeting systems. Weapons misfired, engines faltered, and communication arrays sputtered under the subtle, precise influence of human engineering. For a moment, time itself seemed suspended. The stars stretched in a silent panorama of light and darkness. The human captain's gaze held steady on the viewport, watching the Empire falter. This was not luck. It was not chance. It was calculation, patience, and the knowledge that humanity, though underestimated, had never been conquered. They had endured. They had adapted. They had waited. A smaller Empire frigate surged forward, attempting to isolate the human vanguard. It fired relentlessly, bolts of energy carving arcs across space. But the humans met it with elegance rather than brute force. One ship rotated, reflecting a beam back toward its source with precise angling. Another sent out an electronic pulse, temporarily blinding sensors. The frigate drifted powerless, a monument to misjudgment, as the human fleet flowed around it like water around stone. From a distance, the Empire could only watch as their carefully constructed order dissolved. Their formations faltered, their authority questioned by a species they had long considered insignificant. The humans did not rejoice. They did not gloat. They simply moved forward. Calm and deliberate, asserting dominance not through fear, but through mastery. In the quiet of the flagship's bridge, the captain leaned back slightly, letting the systems hum and breathe around them. Outside, the void was alive with motion, ships spinning, energy flaring, stars reflected across sleek hulls. The humans were not reckless, they were orchestrators of an entirely new type of warfare. One that combined cunning, technology, instinct, and the unshakable certainty that no empire could define them. Hours passed, yet no human ship faltered. The Empire's fleet, vast and heavily armed, began to retract, retreating with cautious recalculations. It was the first time the humans allowed themselves to move with subtle amusement. Laughter rippled quietly through comms, soft and deliberate, echoing across the void, a sound of disbelief and pride intertwined. The audacity of humans was not in firepower, but in the certainty that they had nothing to fear from any number of alien vessels. The stars stretched endlessly before them, colored by distant nebulae and the shattered reflections of cosmic debris. Humanity had arrived in a theater of power it had long been written out of. Yet here they were, untouched, unyielding, and unbowed. The Empire would regroup, of course. They always did. But the lesson had been delivered in silence, precision, and brilliance. Underestimate humanity, and the cost would be catastrophic. And in that quiet pause between engagements, the fleet moved forward as one organism, engines glowing softly against the backdrop of an infinite galaxy, asserting a single, undeniable truth: humans did not surrender. Humans did not negotiate when cornered. Humans did not bow, they adapted. They endured. They thrived. The void itself seemed to acknowledge it, stars shimmering a little brighter, nebulae swirling with colors unseen, as if the universe paused to watch the rebirth of Defiance. Humanity's story was not finished. It was only beginning. The human fleet pressed forward, each ship moving with a confidence born of centuries of survival. The Empire had expected obedience. Or at the very least, hesitation. What it received was a symphony of defiance. Ships arced through space with impossible coordination, weaving through the void like strands of light, each one a calculated challenge to the vast armada before them. The Empire's sensors strained to track them. Every signature flickered and shifted as if the humans had found a way to bend the very fabric of detection. Weapons lined up, energy beams flaring in anticipation, yet every calculated strike missed its mark, either reflected, absorbed, or rendered ineffective by the fleet's ingenious design. The humans had not simply adapted, they had transformed the battlefield itself, from the bridge of the flagship. The captain watched the Empire's frustration unfold in real time. Holographic projections of enemy formations twisted and reshaped as every human maneuver forced recalculation. Every misfire, every faltering engine, every confused signal broadcast across the Empire's network was a lesson in underestimation. The humans were not reckless, they were architects of chaos, guided by precision and instinct, a species tempered in adversity and sharpened by survival. A Valkyr dreadnought surged forward, a towering citadel of metal and weaponry, intent on crushing the humans before they could spread further. Its cannons charged, vast arcs of destructive energy leaping across the void, designed to obliterate anything in its path. Yet the human fleet did not scatter. Instead, it flowed around the threat, slipping through gravitic eddies and asteroid belts, using the environment itself as a weapon. A single pulse of energy erupted from the lead human vessel, subtle but devastating, disrupting the dreadnought's targeting systems. Its shields flared erratically, weapons banks misfired, engines stuttered. The massive ship trembled, not from brute attack, but from the precision of a species that had learned to strike without being struck in return. One by one, other human ships joined the attack, not with the fury of cannons, but with the inevitability of inevitability itself. A carefully orchestrated display of intelligence, cunning, and experience. The Empire's fleet faltered, formations breaking apart under the silent command of tactics they could not comprehend. Every move the humans made seemed preordained, every maneuver almost predictive, as if the fleet itself was alive and aware. Yet there was no arrogance aboard the human ships. There was only certainty, patience, and pride, the kind forged not in conquest, but in survival against impossible odds. Minutes stretched into hours as the dance of defiance continued. The dreadnought attempted to regain control, but each action was anticipated, each countermeasured. Smaller ships flitted between its weapon fire, embedding microdrones that overloaded systems, sabotaging energy conduits, and dismantling the fearsome vessel piece by piece without ever risking a direct confrontation. And then, at the peak of the engagement, the human captain allowed a smile, a rare human expression amidst the hum of energy conduits and holographic projections. This was not triumph yet, it was the inevitability of what was to come. The humans were not just surviving, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. They were demonstrating that strategy, ingenuity, and courage could overcome any technological advantage, any numerical superiority. For the first time, whispers of disbelief echoed across the Empire's communication channels. Orders were questioned. Confidence wavered. Fleet commanders struggled to maintain control as their once mighty formations splintered, all while the human ships moved like shadows in a storm of light. The stars outside shimmered as if responding to the audacity of the humans. Nebulae swirled in colors no eye had catalogued, reflecting the brilliance of ships that refused to be caged, refused to be underestimated, refused to bow. Humanity had arrived, not with brute force alone, but with the artistry of survival, the poetry of strategy, and the unmistakable mark of defiance. The human fleet paused briefly, engines pulsing in quiet rhythm, as though letting the Empire absorb the lesson. Silence fell across the void, heavy with the weight of revelation. They had witnessed a species that laughed in the face of impossibility, that moved with precision and confidence, that held pride as a weapon as sharp as any cannon, and the galaxy began to understand a truth it had long forgotten. Humans were not to be controlled. Humans were not to be underestimated. Humans were to be reckoned with. The human fleet advanced deeper into the Empire's territory, moving like shadows over the battlefield of stars. Each vessel traced arcs of blue-white light, engines whispering against the void, and sensors shimmering in anticipation of threats that had yet to fully materialize. The Empire had assumed it ruled this sector unchallenged. Now, every cruiser, every dreadnought, every command vessel felt the subtle weight of human ingenuity pressing against it. A column of Empire frigates attempted a flanking maneuver, hoping to isolate a portion of the human fleet and overwhelm it. Yet every human ship anticipated the move before it was even completed. Energy fields pulsed in patterns the enemy could not decode, shields shimmered at frequencies designed to disrupt sensors, and microdrones darted from concealed bays, disabling propulsion lines and short-circuiting targeting systems. It was not chaos, it was choreography, a deadly ballet executed with calm precision. Inside the flagship, the captain leaned forward over the holographic map, tracking enemy movements with a clarity born of experience and instinct. Fingers traced predicted trajectories, adjusting the fleet's positions with subtle gestures, each one sending ripples of coordinated responses across the vessels. Crew members moved in unison, their actions silent yet deliberate, part of a greater organism that had learned to survive through calculation and intuition. An Empire dreadnought tried to seize the initiative, unleashing a volley of plasma beams that carved arcs through the void. The humans did not evade blindly. They used the volleys to their advantage, slingshotting through the gravitational distortions caused by the blasts, emerging behind the dreadnought and striking its flank with precise energy pulses. Shields faltered, engines stuttered, and the once imposing vessel groaned under the subtle yet lethal assault. The smaller human ships darted between massive cruisers, weaving through shields and turrets like sparks through a storm. Each ship acted independently, yet in perfect harmony, creating a fluid network of offense and defense that the Empire could not comprehend. Systems faltered, formations splintered, and morale cracked as commanders struggled to react to a force that seemed to anticipate every move. Despite the chaos, the humans maintained calm. No shouts, no panic, no desperation, only calculated confidence. Every pulse of energy, every maneuver, every deployment of drones or shields was a testament to a species that had endured extinction and emerged sharper, smarter, and more resilient. Their pride was not arrogance, it was a quiet knowledge of what they had survived, what they had built, and what they could achieve. Hours passed as the engagement stretched across space, each second etched in tension and precision. The Empire's fleet, vast and heavily armed, began to falter under the relentless intelligence of the humans. One by one, dreadnoughts lost propulsion, frigates drifted powerless, and communication networks splintered under the subtle influence of human technology. What the Empire had expected to be a routine confrontation had become a masterclass in strategy and defiance, and then, in a moment that seemed to suspend time, the human fleet halted briefly, engines pulsing in a calm rhythm. The stars beyond shimmered in response, nebulae reflecting the fleet's soft glow like a mirror to their audacity. It was a pause heavy with intention, letting the Empire absorb the truth. No matter the size of their forces, no matter the weight of their firepower, humanity could not be contained. The Empire's commanders sent frantic messages, attempting to regain control, yet every command came too late. The humans had already calculated their next move, already predicted the shifts in formation, already positioned themselves for the final sequence. The galaxy had assumed humanity was weak. The galaxy had assumed humanity would submit. It had assumed wrong. In the silence between engagements, the human captain allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile. There was no triumph yet, only certainty, patience, and pride. Humanity had returned not as prey, not as a footnote, but as a force that could not be ignored. And as the fleet glided forward, engines humming softly against the backdrop of stars, the universe began to understand a single undeniable truth: humans did not bow. Humans did not surrender. Humans endured, and they were just getting started. The human fleet pressed onward, slicing through the Empire's space like a blade through shadow. Every cruiser, frigate, and corvette moved with a unity that the enemy could not fathom. Flowing around obstacles, through debris fields, past orbital defenses, leaving chaos in their wake. The Empire's vast armada, confident in its superiority, began to falter under the precision and audacity of a species it had long considered expendable. A massive Valkyr battlecruiser surged forward, its energy weapons charging in synchronized waves meant to annihilate the human vanguard. Yet the humans did not scatter. They met the onslaught with calm calculation. Shield matrices shimmered and twisted, deflecting beams in patterns that made targeting impossible. Microdrones swarmed unseen, embedding into the battlecruiser systems, silently crippling propulsion, navigation, and weapon controls. The great ship faltered, trembling as the humans moved around it like shadows unbound by gravity. From the flagship's bridge, the captain's eyes traced every movement across the holographic star map. Patterns emerged, shifts anticipated, and opportunities exploited before the enemy even realized they existed. The crew moved without hesitation, their motions precise, fluid, almost ritualistic. This was not mere combat, it was mastery, a testament to humanity's intelligence, resilience, and pride. Empire frigates attempted to flank the human formation, desperate to find a weak point. But humans had no weak points. Every vessel acted as both shield and weapon, every pulse calculated to disrupt, disable, and intimidate. When one frigate fired a salvo of energy, it became a conduit for countermeasures, deflected pulses, sabotage systems, and calculated interference that left the enemy in stunned paralysis. The battlefield stretched across the void, a dance of light and shadow, of energy and motion, with humanity at its center. The Empire's commanders realized too late that force alone could not conquer them. Size, numbers, and firepower mattered little against species that had survived annihilation, adapted to impossible odds, and mastered the art of strategy. Hours passed like minutes as the human fleet carved its path through enemy formations. Entire sectors quivered under the subtle pressure of tactics they could not predict. Supplies were cut, fleets isolated, communication networks scrambled, and the Empire's pride shattered not with brute force, but with the quiet inevitability of human intellect. And then, the humans paused, hovering among the stars, engines humming softly. They did not celebrate. They did not gloat. Their presence was statement enough. The Empire's forces drifted in disarray, systems faltering, morale crumbling, realizing that their expectations had been fatally wrong. The humans were not just survivors. They were a reckoning. In the calm of the flagship, the captain allowed a faint smile. The galaxy had long assumed humanity would retreat, submit, vanish. Instead, humanity had moved with purpose, precision, and pride. They had proven that survival was only the beginning. Strategy, courage, intelligence, and defiance were their true weapons. As the fleet prepared to advance deeper into contested space, stars shimmered around them like witnesses. Nebulae reflected the glimmer of ship hulls, asteroids glinted like scattered gems, and the void itself seemed to pulse with awareness. Humanity's audacity had shifted the balance. The Empire had learned that no number of ships could dominate a species that refused to bow. The message was clear, unspoken but undeniable: underestimate humanity, and the consequences would be absolute. And the humans moved forward, engines glowing, lights pulsing, and hearts resolute, carrying centuries of survival and defiance into the heart of the galaxy. The void stretched endlessly, yet it no longer felt empty. Every star, every nebula, every fragment of light seemed to pulse with the presence of humanity. The human fleet moved forward, engines humming like the heartbeat of a species reborn, through sectors that had long assumed they were uncontested. The Empire's fleets, once proud and absolute, faltered before them, scattered by tactics and ingenuity that no machine, no protocol, no doctrine could predict. The largest Empire dreadnoughts converged, desperate to crush this defiant fleet in one decisive strike. Their weapons flared, energy beams carving arcs across space. A symphony of destruction meant to intimidate and annihilate. But the humans did not panic. They did not scatter. They moved as one, a coordinated organism of ships and technology, turning the enemy's aggression into opportunity. Shields reflected, engines counterpulled, drones infiltrated systems, and the dreadnoughts faltered, massive, powerful, and yet impotent in the face of calculated precision. From the flagship's bridge, the captain's gaze swept over the battlefield. Every enemy movement was anticipated, every vulnerability exploited, every risk mitigated. The human crew moved with silent efficiency, a symphony of intellect and instinct, their pride not in destruction, but in mastery. Humanity was not here to conquer with brute force. They were here to remind the galaxy of something older, something fundamental. Survival alone was not enough, but intelligence, courage, and unyielding defiance were eternal. The Empire's fleets tried again, pressing forward, hoping to overwhelm with sheer numbers. One by one, their weapons failed, their formations splintered, their morale crumbled. Each human ship acted independently yet in perfect harmony, exploiting the smallest opening, turning every flaw into advantage. By the time a Valkyr command carrier attempted to retaliate, it was already too late, shields down, engines dead, weapons inoperable, left adrift as the human fleet passed with effortless grace. The galaxy watched, silent witnesses to the spectacle. Human ships gliding through the void, unbowed and unbroken, a testament to endurance and pride. Colonies long oppressed whispered in wonder as news spread, fleets previously subjugated reconsidered their loyalties, and even distant observers paused in awe. Humanity had returned, not as a footnote, not as a remnant, but as an unstoppable force of intellect and will. The final Empire dreadnought, once a symbol of absolute power, drifted powerless in the void, its energy fields flickering. The humans did not fire the killing blow. They did not need to. Presence alone conveyed the lesson. The galaxy had underestimated them. It had assumed silence meant surrender. It had assumed humanity could be crushed, and yet, here they were, engines pulsing softly, lights reflecting across the void, the human fleet calm, confident, victorious in its own way. Humanity had endured, adapted, and risen. They had proven that defiance, strategy, and courage were weapons sharper than any cannon. They had reminded the galaxy that fear could never replace respect, and power alone could never conquer will. The captain stepped back, letting the systems hum around them, watching the stars stretch into infinity. They did not speak. Words were unnecessary. The humans had spoken through action, through presence, through precision and audacity. Their story had returned to the galaxy. Loud, unyielding, unforgettable, and as the fleet moved onward, engines glowing like a river of light, the stars themselves seemed to pause, as if acknowledging what had occurred. Humans endure, and in the silence of the void, the universe finally understood. Never underestimate humanity.